Yeah, she was there then. Yep.
And yeah, you're marking on your clean shaven. This is how he robs banks. Oops, sorry, that would be live.
Yes, you're live now. I just told you you were going live.
Oh yes. Thankfully, Chris is not the sort of person who would rob banks. Because if he shaved his beard, then nobody could recognize him.
Well, welcome to November 2015 Tolkien Society monthly meeting and broadcast. It's actually what, November 13th?
It's November 14th.
14th. Wow, that one went by. So November 14th, 2015. We meet monthly, generally on the second Saturday of each month from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Our website is tolkienscholars.org. And everybody is welcome to join us in the conversation on all things Tolkien related, whatever your level of interest, whether it's just casual and you've maybe just seen a movie or something, or you're a hardcore fan and have been following it for many years and love the books and such. All levels are welcome to join in the discussion. Even if you know little to nothing, you just want to know a little bit more about this, what is all this whole Tolkien Middle Earth thing that people keep talking about. Welcome aboard. So Maya Govinam. So today, so far, hopefully there'll be a few others walking in soon too. But so far with us, everybody introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm the secretary.
I'm Noah. I'm a guest.
I'm Chris.
And the three of us are official members of the UK Tolkien Society. This is an official SMEAL of the UK Tolkien Society.
And a SMEAL is a term that refers to a local branch.
Chapter.
Yeah,
Subsidiary. We're independent, but
that's right.
Acknowledged.
Affiliated.
There we go. And we're hoping for what? Richard's not making it.
Richard should be coming in pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Brian, if you want to. Okay, it looks like Jeremiah's here. Welcome, Jeremiah.
Hey.
And he's over in England, right?
Yes. Yes, he is. Very much so.
And Brian was in England this summer, and they got to meet with each other. Come on in.
I'm still a bit sore, Jeremiah, about Kullervo
Welcome, Richard.
out there. And it's still not, Kullervo's still not available here until April next year.
I asked Beth Ann to send us a copy.
You did?
I did.
Very good.
So
well done.
Good to see you.
It may show up for Christmas.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. This is no.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jeremiah.
Richard has joined us as well. Richard. No, we were waiting excitedly for you. Please have a seat.
So anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself. That is part of the notes.
Mm-hmm.
So
hail
and well met.
Brian, if you would go ahead and read the previous month's meeting notes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hawk.
Thank you.
October 2015 meeting notes. Hawk, Richard, Brian, and Noah attended. Brian read notes from September, and comments related to the notes were made, such as Hawk's tree paper on Tolkien.
Which I added those links on the website.
And that's on the website, Tolkien and Trees. So do have a look at that paper. It's quite good. And so we were referring to that.
Oh, good.
And then also Richard made a recommendation as we were talking about Tolkien and World War I, that there's actually a great YouTube channel called The Great War, and I have had a look at that, so it's quite good. And there's a weekly update about what was going on exactly 100 years ago during World War I.
Actually, they published a biography of Tolkien last week.
Nice.
Another one? Who was it?
The Great War.
Oh, you mean
the Great War
online
channel on Tolkien, what he did in World War I.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not a book, but you could say.
Okay. Because I do have the book.
They devoted a special episode.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very nice.
Still need to research Elvish left and right hand, and if anyone else has commented on the significance of facing the west, and I have done a little research and I have an answer.
Excellent.
Do you want me to bring it up now or at the end?
Let's do it after we get to
All right. Hawk continued on Vineyard Tengwar, page 1. We've been on page 1 for the last 12 months.
Years. Yeah, that's been a couple of years.
Been a couple of years.
I think we finished that.
But we finished page 1 of the Elvish names for body features such as throat, Lenko, heart, Hon, Ore, neck, Yat, thigh, Tiuko, leg, Telko, a pair of legs, talwi, male, ner, foot, tala, flat of foot, talan, which is possibly related to Elvish talan, which is a flat in a tree. Anyway, nifty tree houses. Right, then we got an update on RPG research news, asking Hawk to kind of give us an update on how that's going for him. Had some good interviews, and RPG trailer funding is moving on with some potential sources. So if you have more interest or more
Bring that up
questions or whatever, you can look on his website.
Yeah, rpgresearch.com or rpgtrailer.com.
Is there a trailer for your? No, never mind. I better not go there.
Actually,
Yeah.
somebody just sent me a video.
Really?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
A trailer on your trailer?
And then bad news, Tolkien's Clero is not out in the USA until April 5, 2016. Boo!
But we have a spy who's presently in England and will, I hope, be mailing us a copy shortly.
Yes.
I mean,
I didn't know we were funding.
talk about an outright bias.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand.
Come on,
few
Harper
months.
Collins, get it together.
I can understand a month,
Because
delay.
Harper
Yeah,
Collins has
distribution
a
shipping,
large
all that.
outfit here in Spokane, Washington, and would like to. They would like to have a nice preview copy available.
Well, when the Children of Hurin was being released, I was sent an early copy so that on release day, I did a reading from the intro and the first couple
nice.
chapters live over the internet.
Great.
That was.
Can you talk to those people and see if they'll send you Clero so we can read it in April?
I don't even know who they were. They were just a bunch of Tolkien fans from around the world that
When people
Ask
give
you
you
to do
free
it.
things, say
No,
thank you.
no, but Olive Tree is owned by that
I know.
outfit, and therefore there are some channels to
Yeah,
ask.
yeah.
It was because I had a radio show
All
at the
that.
time, the Synthetic Zen show, that I also did Tolkien music and brief discussion. So I had both an FM terrestrial radio and a
Oh, right.
so
So it was a connection with the radio.
yeah.
All right, so moving on from that bad news,
Yeah.
trying to recover from the wound. That's the real tragedy here, not Kullervo.
Yeah.
Anyway, Brian mentioned that Mordor is the informal name given this year to a dark part of the North Pole
right.
of Charon, Pluto's largest moon. So it's informally called Mordor Macula. And then Noah read Letters of Tolkien 106 to publisher Allen and Unwin, which referred. We talked about how in this Farmer Giles of Ham is mentioned, and Tolkien's desire for large chunks of time to write, but also we noticed that the gaps between the letters in Letters of Tolkien is getting longer. And so one possibility for that would be that Tolkien, most of his letters were written to his son Christopher. He was writing him quite a bit when Christopher was stationed in South Africa with the Royal Air Force. And now that Christopher's in England now, we have the feeling that that's why the number of letters to Christopher aren't as many, and it's mostly to his publisher, etc. So, and of course some letters weren't kept. Richard read letter 107, which mentioned the German translation of The Hobbit finally being completed post-war. And Tolkien considered The Lord of the Rings his magnus opus, in his own words.
That's right.
And then he objected to Disneyfication of fairy tales, which we already know how he felt about Walt Disney and the dwarves especially. Brian read letter 108, and it referred to the fact that Farmer Giles of Ham was finally published and illustrated by Pauline Baynes, which Tolkien's friend C.S. Lewis liked so much after seeing the copy of Farmer Giles of Ham, he asked Pauline Baynes to illustrate his Chronicles of Narnia. So if you're familiar with those illustrations, same
We'll
illustrator.
have to go take a look.
Yes.
Yes.
And then Hawk read letter 109, which referred to his publisher, and you may remember that Allen and Unwin, who published the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, is it Stanley Unwin's son, Rayner, who was like 13 when he reviewed The Hobbit for his dad, now is like 22 or something like that.
Yeah,
in
he
his
was
20s.
really young.
So now he's older, and he was asked again. Tolkien really wanted to know what did he think of the current version of The Lord of the Rings so far, and Rainer gave some really great comments, and it takes a village to publish a book, I guess. And then a great quote from Tolkien: "A solitary art is no art at all," referring to the community in which you get feedback. So then that led into talking about that. Noah commented about Tolkien and niggling on things. What do we wish Tolkien had niggled on more? For example, orcs. How were they made after all? We don't really know. There seem to be conflicting ideas in Tolkien's corpus of his work. Hogg pointed out feedback from Tolkien's fans was solicited for the Hobbit revisions. He was really open to that. How open was JRRT to criticism of inconsistencies? And it seems to have something to do with the motivation, perhaps, of those who are referring to it. Richard related that to his own journey as an author, wanting feedback but not wishing for mere punctuation and grammar advice. Hawk gave an example of his son's writing and dedication to crafting it with revisions and feedback from people at Worldcon.
Yes.
Yes.
Some actual published and award-winning authors
Right.
in science fiction
Right.
critiqued his.
We'll
At 50
follow.
years old. That's pretty exciting.
We'll follow Drake with interest to see
Yeah.
where this all leads.
You sound like the Emperor
Yes.
in Star Wars.
That was intentional.
We will be watching your career with great interest.
Well, technically, it was a senator and said
Yeah.
Yes.
quite as.
Yeah. Not yet.
Yes,
Emperor.
pick your. What should we call it? Palpatine's Darth Sidious. Richard made reference to Hamilcar in letter 109 as Hannibal's father, which was really interesting, and that's the Hannibal who crossed the Alps on elephants, of course. So Hamilcar loved Tolkien's obscure references that we probably should know more of. Letter 109, continuing discussion about the necromancer / Anatar as versions of Sauron, immortality, and the death cult on Numenor. Also, Gollum as character discussed. And next meeting decided as Saturday, November 14th, 1 to 3 p.m. at Hawk's house. We plan to read Tolkien's novella, Farmer Giles of Ham, in a single setting, if possible, or 2 or 3.
Please enter. Maya Gobinan, are you Corey?
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi, morning, Corey. Oh, we got a spot there.
Or
Oh yes, we've got a spot on the couch there.
Oh,
thank
If you're feeling friendly.
so Corey, this is your first time joining us, correct?
Correct.
So welcome, Corey. This is we're just going through the meeting notes, and we are live on the air
We are being
through Google Plus. So each of you go and introduce yourselves to Corey here.
Yep.
And
So I'm Brian. I'm longtime associate of Hawks and current secretary of Tolkien Society. So
I'm Noah. I'm Brian's neighbor and longtime friend.
and this is his second time.
actually, I think you came 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the third time.
Second consecutive.
Okay.
I'm Richard Baldwin.
Long-time member.
And author.
I joined them when they were meeting in public places and walked in off the street.
Oh, cool.
Which is what was nice about that.
Yes, I'm Chris Cooperstein, also member of the Society in England.
Tolkien Society.
Oh, wow.
We're the three of us are actual UK. Oh, did you? Oh, 4 of us. Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot.
It's Brian's fault.
Okay, well, no, that's good.
We're like a local.
And I did it to
chapter.
him, so that's.
We're like a local chapter of the worldwide Tolkien Society, which is based in England.
The UK, and then, so we call it's called SMEAL. It is a name for it.
And they're actually the
It's a hot
only.
reference.
Is this correct? They're the only society which was
Officially sanctioned.
sanctioned by Tolkien during his lifetime.
Oh, okay.
So,
cool.
Yeah, and the family and stuff. So,
Yeah.
and then so I'm Hawk Robinson, founder of the Tolkien Society.
Karen's got a few other puzzles.
And a few other Tolkien related things.
Just a few.
Just a few. So, welcome.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Go ahead and continue with the next one.
Okay, and it's Corey.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Corey.
I apologize for my lateness.
Oh, don't worry about it. We're just glad you're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just basically finished reading the notes, which are also available on TolkienScholars.org. And I was just saying that the agenda for today is primarily to read through one of Tolkien's lesser-known short stories called Farmer Giles of Ham, where it's a little bit more of a light-hearted setting. But of course, we also like to talk about serious works of Tolkien, such as Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and other such things. Speaking of that is the end of the notes.
Okay.
And I would just like to mention, if I could, that reference to left and the right.
Yes, please.
So this goes back a few months ago when I think it was Richard who referred to it first, but it has to do with the directions. We were talking about Elvish, because we do a little Elvish vocab thing at the beginning, being geeks that we are. And so we're learning some interesting Elvish vocabulary.
The words for the hands were synonymous with north and south.
Right, and could you just refer to them one more
You
time?
guys, you guys were talking about this in October, I know.
Correct.
For the video.
Oh, you're
Wonderful.
okay. Great.
No, that's what it's there for. That's the beauty of it.
I know
Somebody
you
actually
guys-
watched it?
Well, I guess you guys were just trying to determine how to pronounce Q and.
Yeah, well, we're always none of us are linguists. So
Yeah.
I've studied half a dozen languages. But
We were like, we think it's Qua, but then the question is, what was the finish, right?
Right,
Because
is it
you
more
pulled a lot
finish,
from the
right,
finish.
and I haven't heard back from Artemir and Hallian because I think they
What about you, Jeremiah? Do you know about the Q? How was it intended to be
found
pronounced?
it more of a case.
'Cause I haven't looked at
Oh,
it,
we've got comments from Jeremiah. Sorry. Jeremiah says, "Oh, don't feel bad. I've not read Clevo yet." And we did read the Kalevala version of Clevo. We did I think it was a couple sessions. We read through and then compare and contrast because it was not long after Children of Thurin had come out.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about Turin Turambar, which was kind of a rewrite of Clevo. And when you read, so it's the misfortune, or it's Clevo, the unfortunate Clevo is the name of the Edda song that they do this. And
Is it the subtitle "Don't Be Clever"?
yeah, pretty much. Don't do what he did.
Don't be evil.
So, because he does all these terrible things. So and it's a nice little lyrical thing. He does all these terrible things, and then bad things happen to him. Then he whines, "Why do all these bad things always happen to me? Because I killed this person and raped that person and killed a child and all does these terrible things." And then whines about the world's against him and blah, blah, blah. Well, so Tolkien did a rewrite, but you don't care about Clevo. He's a jerk, right? He's not so, you don't feel sympathetic to him. You feel bad for all the people's lives he's ruined.
What I want to know is with the new, with Tolkien's
What did he do
translation,
with it?
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a translation, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
So, he's
Probably
still
about the
dealing
same.
with the same thing, but,
Yeah.
will it, I suppose he's not changing the plot line, but perhaps the
Oh,
phrasing and how it,
we'll see.
maybe, yeah.
So,
But Turin Turambar is,
but Turambar is a much more sympathetic character. Yes, he does some of the same things, but they're more explicable. The dragon hypnotized and made him forget that she was his sister, things like that. That's completely different than the knowingly doing the stuff that Clevo.
right.
It's a big difference and completely changes the experience of the character. So again, this was meant to be, the stories that they use to teach their children the Finnish. And I'm half Finnish, for those who haven't heard me say that for all the other shows.
As opposed to being unfinished.
Right. Well, about half Finnish, what's the other half? Right? So, anyway, so these are the songs, and they're meant to teach, moral stories and all of that. So it's understandable. But
I should try that on my children now. I should be like, don't be like Clevo, or maybe I should. Yes.
unfortunate Clevo.
Don't grow up to be like Turin.
Don't grow up to be like Turin. Don't look dragons in the eye.
Something like that. Yeah. Don't wear a sword that can speak to you.
So, so you're asking, the hands were, let's see, Jeremiah, it takes a long time to translate it to American. We don't care, we can read it in British English.
He's just He's pulling our leg. He's American.
Okay, I know, but still.
Well, yeah, but I'm always complaining that I'm having to read English when I speak American.
Guessing you guys are going to mention the newly discovered, oh yes, thank you for bringing that up, map of Middle-earth, which is annotated by Tolkien and Pauline Bangs. Remember me spreading that around? So I should add that.
We should have a link.
It's on our Google Plus thing. I'll add it to.
Okay.
I will forward you the link so you can put it in the notes.
Is that going to be released with the book?
The map book, which is on pre-order.
Oh, I doubt it. Darn.
Maybe not.
When is that supposed to be out?
In time for Christmas.
Oh, I don't know.
Familiar.
I don't know. It depends on how long ago they discovered it. It was what,
Yeah.
springtime? I'm not sure.
It might be in there though, if that's.
I mean, this is the first I had heard about this.
Yeah.
This map, but maybe we should discuss it more next time because
Yeah, when we have more information.
Yeah, let's
But,
do
we will have a link for it though, so make a note to make sure I send you that. So anyway, we had four might the right hand and higher might the left hand.
right. I mean,
And and Richard brought up, well, wait a minute, so what was your orientation for that because of the north and south thing? So
Right. Okay, so it's so the
like Numenor and such.
right. So you've got these the left and the right hand, which, if you think about it, the left hand being a cognate of the word south, and then the right hand being a cognate of the word north, that would have the elves would be then facing to the west towards Valinor. So I found a reference to this.
Rather than facing north as a point of orientation.
Right. Because on our maps we put
West
north at
is
the
the
top,
orientation
but on some of the maps, Tolkien deliberately put the west at the top
because of how
because of Valinor. So it's kind of like, what do you base your orientation on? Okay, so here it is. This is in Appendix E of the Return of the King. And he says in here, the names of the letters most widely known and used were, and he gives a few references to the alphabet. Newman, Hjarman, Roman, Forman equals west, south, east, north. Refer to Sindarin, Dun or Amnun, Harad, Brun, or Amrun, Forod. These letters commonly indicated the points west, south, east, and north, even in languages that used quite different terms. They were in the Westlands named in this order, beginning with and facing west. Hjarman and Forman indeed meant left-hand region and right-hand region, the opposite to the arrangement in many Mannish languages. So all it says there is just facing west. So, but I think it would be an accurate inference that the reason why they would have
a
it
priority.
Actually, it's
as well.
interesting that Mannish languages are opposite.
Which, yeah, because Numenor was west as well. So,
but Mannish going back in his culture that he came up with for men before Numenor.
oh, that's true.
Because
Why east? Why would
maybe the beginning,
the
coming
shadow?
from the east.
They came out of the east, didn't they?
under
Yeah.
Morgoth's
Yeah,
influence,
it's where
they came
Morgoth
out.
Well,
he was in the north.
wait, before that though, you have the awakening of the elves. They came from the
Right.
east, and then
But
I'm
that
not
was the
sure.
elves.
Well, the elves, but what about the men? They
Yeah,
came.
that's weird.
They came off. Yeah, they were off the map. Literally, they came from.
I'm wondering even if there's some reference to them being from the north, and you think about the Rohirrim, they came from the north. So there might be some, even kind of Tolkien might kind of come up with a reason why you would have north at the top of the map. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I love that he didn't follow our current standard of north as usually the main point for the Rosetta or whatever on the map. That he chose west because in that culture it had more significance. It's a nice touch that you don't see very often. So.
There's one other reference I found on a website that just said that the early word lists are interesting. The gnomish word, because remember before it was elves, it was gnomes. He kind of was playing around with the idea of what to call these
They became
creatures.
the Sindarians, I think.
Exactly. But the gnomish word for left hand also means clumsy, while right hand also means clever, which would follow our own, actual, Latin for left is sinister, Latin for right is dexter. So you're dexterous or you are sinister. Left hand not being typical, being looked down on as somehow dodgy.
And I'm semi-sinister because I'm semi-dexterous.
Yeah.
So it
I
says
must
here.
be sinister then.
The Quenya word for left hand also means slow, dull, and stiff. These words are likely made obsolete by revision. Later Quenya and Sindarin connect the right hand with north and the left hand with south. But Elvish terms for right-handed and left-handed still exist. even though in one place Tolkien states that elves are ambidextrous, but he also contradicts himself in this. Such as, for example, when Maedhros was right-handed before his Thingor ordeal, but later he lived to wield his sword with left hand more deadly than his right had been in Silmaril. So.
Yeah. I wonder whether Lewis picked up on this and used it specifically making Narnia in the north.
Oh, yeah. Although what's interesting there is that with Narnia, he chose to have towards the east, towards the sunrise,
Technically,
the place of paradise.
technically,
Whereas in Tolkien's world, it is to the west.
Yes.
technically, the center of the Narnian world is the lamppost.
True.
That's
Yeah.
when they entered
Right.
Well,
from the magician's net.
in reality, in our world or whatever,
Yep.
everything to the east of us has kind of this layered history. So the closer you get to the center, and so there was always this constant pushing towards the west, and you could almost say that the United States is one of the youngest countries because we don't have that layered history.
Go west, young man, go west.
Yeah, and so
West has always symbolized that, hasn't it?
yeah, as the new or
The
The
frontier.
land of the
frontier,
ADHD.
And then
There's a
being
reason
in
to say it.
Japan for a year and reading Clavel's book and some other things.
James Clavell,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
layered history
Yeah.
of the East.
Shogun and Taipan and Gaijin
Yes.
and
I forgot that you've been in Japan.
Noble House.
So have I.
Yeah, okay. All
It
right.
don't matter.
So there it is.
Fun.
So that's my even-handed treatment of the left and right hand.
Even.
Ooh, sorry.
But a bunch.
You sure that wasn't the sinister?
So I was going through the.
Maybe.
I'm on omniglot.com for Tengwar, and for Quenya and Sindarin, I can't find the letter Q equivalent. I find the KHA and K and S.
Languages. Who's it off of that?
So like, it has each symbol or sigil, and then, what the equivalent consonant or vowel is.
Well, the Q sound in
And there's, so there's
English isn't
KH.
really
Right, I was just
in
saying,
isolation.
there's actually a couple of KHs. There's more than one KH.
So it could be a KH.
One KH is more like
Q.
Harma, like H,
Yeah.
heavy H. The other one is more like a hard C,
Yeah, so
Kalma.
Kenya.
So, well, I guess, yeah, so Harma and Kalma. And then, there's QW. Here's one, QW. Or, excuse me, KW. I'm conflating.
Okay.
So that is the equivalent of the Q sound, is a KW.
Okay.
So it's Quess, or Quesse.
Okay.
And it looks like, actually kind of like a Q. So it's a line and then a little circle that way. So
Every once in a while I go questing the grocery store. But
this is on omniglot.com /writing/tengwar.htm. Omniglot.com /writing/tengwar.htm.
we're going to post a link, right?
Oh, sorry. So Jeremiah's child is not well.
Oh.
So he's okay, and he's back. His child is being very sick, so he had to step away. But it looks like he's back here.
I hope Lucy gets well soon.
And he says, "Did you guys see the new Kickstarter project about a new Elvish language book?" Did not.
No.
I hope it's better than the red book that Michael Martinez lambasted, whom I was hoping would join us this month, but I guess we forgot, we got tied up. And I do have the red book that, in one of the Tolkien news, I was very excited, like, hey, did you know about this book? I found it at a Borders or whatever for very little money. And
Borders? Somebody say Borders.
yeah, I was gonna say that.
well, it was actually Languages of Middle-earth. Sorry, multiple. Complete guide to all 14 of the languages Tolkien invented. Contains a dictionary of all non-English words, an English Elvish glossary, rules of grammar and pronunciation, translations, how to write Elvish and other alphabets and runes by Ruth S. Noel, author of the Mythology of Middle-earth. Well, I forget which Tolkien mood it was that we had Michael Martinez, but he lambasted this book quite seriously. He's like, no, this is not a good resource, etc.
Or is it because there were mistakes in it?
I guess it's just way off. It's a lot of made up stuff that she kind of just. A lot of the history of Middle Earth, because this is dated.
And like Star Wars cinematic.
What?
Yeah, it was a lot of people fan style rather than necessarily well researched.
Fanon? I just
So,
discovered this word fanon.
This was 1974, and then again in 1980. So it predates all the history of Middle Earth and stuff. It's just after the Silmarillion. So she didn't have much to go on.
So it's just.
So it's
it's an early edition.
It's really extrapolated.
Oh,
But it's
nice.
in the style of a dictionary and then a glossary and all of that.
Looks nice.
And then you were mentioning Tolkien and the Great War as far as they did special. So there's one by John Garth called Tolkien and the Great War, The Threshold of Middle Earth. And so that's another.
That channel's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that
What was
sounds
happening
great.
100 years ago.
Okay, so Jeremiah.
So that's interesting that there's a Kickstarter.
Right. So it's a.
So you sent us a link,
Okay.
which of course, one thing that is disappointing with Google Plus is it doesn't let you save the links that are posted in the chat room.
Can you maybe just copy?
But I'm gonna go ahead and copy it. So
Okay.
and then post it somewhere.
And it's. Did you say Jeremiah? So it's about the Elvish language.
Yes, Elvish language book.
I'm
And,
surprised we don't have anything. Like,
So I've seen that before, like 10 to 12 years ago. I thought of picking it up at the time. Glad I didn't pick it up. I was talking about the Noel book.
oh, right.
Uh,
So maybe there just hasn't been an updated one in a long time.
right. So that'll be interesting if we have some people.
I mean, there's some
responding to
serious
our
scholars
posters.
out there. I mean, like there's the one dude who was like the consultant for all the movies, because they generated they wrote songs.
David S. Sello?
Yeah.
Well, Michael has comments about him too.
Yeah, I was going to
Because
say.
Michael was one of the ones consulted also initially for the movie, but there was some weirdness there. I guess they picked his brain but didn't.
There
Give him
always is
attribution.
in scholarly communities.
Yeah. But
Well, this guy has a
and
master's or a
and
PhD.
Salo or Salo, whatever his last name, the academic world is pretty critical of him.
Really?
From what I've seen. But again, that's part of the nature of his debate,
Sure.
right? So, my understanding is the Tolkien linguist mailing lists aren't necessarily in agreement with his interpretations that were used in the Peter Jackson movies
Interesting.
in a number of areas.
I
don't know the
I wonder what the mythopoetic.
Right. Mythopoeic.
Yeah, because they've been around a long
Right.
time.
I believe they're some of the ones that go, hit or miss.
Yeah.
Is Salo the one that has the website Art of Lambion? Is that?
I'm not sure, but he was the main consultant.
He's on like the
Peter
DVD
Jackson's study.
interviews
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well, this website Art of Lambion
Yes.
has its own Quain course,
There's
Yeah.
quite a few websites that have.
but this one seemed a bit more scholarly than
Right.
than even
Yeah.
the book that you showed.
Right.
Well, I was
lady
going
who-
to. This is so the Parma and the Tengwar, Vineyard Tengwar, are kind of the official language societies.
And that was from what, the 1980s?
Let's see. So I was going to actually read the brief.
Oh,
part
okay.
of that,
Go ahead.
Because since we finally got past the first page, we can actually read the newsletter itself. So this is Vineyard Tengwar, September 1988. The bi-monthly, it's got hand-fixed typos because it must have been like a hand press or something.
Well, and plus the Elvish letters, like who had it?
No. He has a bi-monthly and left the H out and had to put in a little H to fix it because it was bi-monty. Bi-monthly newsletters of the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship, or ELF for short. And they have an email list you can join us with on this. Not too high activity. Edited by Jorge Quinones of San Diego, California. And then, so the cover art that we've been reading, the body parts, was by Tom Loback. Chart of body parts in Quenya and Kenya. Interesting. The same picture appeared in Parma, Elda Lambaran 7. So Parma predates actually Vineyard Tengwar, and he explains why they spun this off. Let me just grab that quickly to show you. Arta Philology 1.
Yeah, that's some serious.
Oh, this is actually not the newsletter, but it's the same. This was actually Stockholm 2005, proceedings of the first international conference on J.R.R. Tolkien's invented languages.
Right.
So this is kind of the official
But that's
people.
definitely the groove in which Tolkien was running, because
Yes.
philology
Oh,
is
yeah.
the love of languages.
That was his love of the whole
Yes.
evolution and where it all comes
There you
from.
And the fact that, as we've said before, he invented the languages, and then he invented a world in which those languages
To
could
grow
now
and
could grow.
evolve.
Yeah.
And
There is a course at the University of Washington that deals with
nice. And there's that online one too. by the way.
Tolkien's love of philology and
Nice.
how it's an introductory course to philology itself
Excellent.
that's supposed to make students want to,
I just wish more
Do
Americans
philology.
loved
yeah.
other real living languages more,
Right.
you know, or even their own language. So never mind.
It is it is kind of impressive that in our, it was never thought of in the old days. You learn a new language, but actually creating a language didn't really come
It's
along
different.
until Tolkien really kind of did his
No, it was
thing.
kind of a thing in the late 1800s. That was
Was
kind
it?
of,
Well, there
yeah.
was Esperanto, which was kind of about 100 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a real, I mean, because there was this kind of almost second Renaissance kind of period.
Esperanto had a reason for it.
Yeah.
That was a trade
Well,
language.
That's what I'm saying. is
But that
like-
wasn't like inventing it for a fictional world. I think
Right.
I think
That's
Tolkien
the
probably was
difference.
a pioneer.
Right, yeah, he was a very big pioneer. I mean, we
Well-
laugh about Klingon, but I mean,
Yeah.
Klingon really didn't get it started if it wasn't for Tolkien.
Who laughs about
creating-
Klingon?
Well, actually, isn't it more because of fandom that Klingon evolved? Because it wasn't an established language before.
But I think it's true.
Yeah, but
though.
it has more
But I think-
words to
I
it.
think
Yeah.
the idea, though, this is true. So Tolkien contributed something to our understanding of fantasy in that he had a full-fleshed world, and other people who tried to have something similar knew that they needed to include words that sounded like they came from that culture. So I think you're right. Klingon probably wouldn't exist. They wouldn't think of having another language necessarily.
Right, I just think that, I mean, I don't know how many words Esperanto had, but I don't know if it was considered a full language or not.
Yeah, it was an official.
Yes.
fully
It was
developed,
supposed to be a worldwide,
Right.
So that no one
but it
would
never
say,
caught on.
yeah, never.
Sort of like
It's a
Piggy.
lot of effort.
There are lots of references to Esperanto in one of my favorite British comedies, Red Dwarf.
I have the complete Red Dwarf collection.
I haven't seen Red Dwarf in a
Yeah,
while.
it's a great collection. So anyway, so the cover was originally in Parma El de Lambaran, number 7, page 27, except that the Elvish names were in the Tengwar instead of anglicized.
For our benefit.
Here on the cover of Vinyar Tengwar is presented in our own alphabet and additionally in our own language for the benefit of the Elvish illiterate, of which the editor is one. Editorial introduction. Welcome to the first issue of the newsletter of the Elf. This new fanzine will fill the gap that our illustrious journal has failed to do, no offense intended, Chris, to come out early, or come out regularly. Even now, Parma is trying to establish a regular publishing schedule of either biannually or annually. I originally had wanted to publish this newsletter on a monthly basis, but rejected the entire idea when I figured how thin our issues would be. If I had not started the zine, the articles in this issue probably would have found their way into either Beyond Brie or Qatar, which is some other
What is spell Qatar?
Quitar, Quettar, Quitar. Both which I highly recommend to any reader. Nancy Marsh, the editor of Beyond Brie, which I've never heard of before this, has my sympathies. I now know how hard she works as an editor. It isn't easy. The first rule of Vinyar Tengwar is to inform people about the elf in general. This is what this issue is about. In addition to this, I have written a short article on the names of the Elvish numbers, which I hope will prove useful and handy for prospective speakers and users of the language, and a couple of other interesting articles. If the copy of VT you received came damaged or chewed up by the Postal Service, drop me a line and I'll be happy to send you another copy absolutely free. So that gives you an overview of it. We've got other stuff we need to be reading, but I just
So is that like the intro letter for
that is the intro letter for it. So we've been reading all these body parts from the first issue of Vinyar Tengwar, September 1988.
The first page of the
That was the cover of the newsletter. Now we've actually read the first actual page from the editor
And this-
introducing the language.
Hawk, correct me if I'm wrong, but then this book is a collection of a number of.
Yes, this is volume 1, issues 1 through 10, and then I have multiple. There's many issues. So
Okay.
So this is something we keep incorporating. We've tried to incorporate all these different sources.
In one day, we've read the second page. I
Yes,
feel like we made so much progress.
compared to years for the first page.
Isn't that what scholars do?
It's one
So-
great page for man.
Oh. And so next time I think I'll have to read the foreword from Art of Philology 1, the Proceedings of the First International Conference on J.R.R. Tolkien's Invented Languages, Omentielva Minja, Stockholm 2005, published by the Artist Society 2007.
Is it
The
just
Tenwar means just the Elvish alphabet.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay.
And meanwhile, Jeremiah has been commenting prolifically. So he said, glad I didn't pick it up, the Red Book. Here's the Kickstarter, so I put that into an email formatting for you. All Middle-earth languages, it seems, I'm not sure what, the Kickstarter's for all languages, I think he said.
Oh.
Good. A definitive guide to Tolkien's Elvish writing systems, including the Tengwar, Sarati, and the Kurth, covering Quenya, Sindarin languages, I suppose, saying all isn't right. So not all but those. It's far from exhaustive. Nothing there about Kuzdal, for example. However, it does say, quote, collaborative works used for the books include those from the publishers the Vinyar Tengwar and Parma Elda Lambert.
Hey!
Carl Hostetter, Arden Smith, Per Lindberg, Mans Bjorkman, Helga Foskanger.
Yep, that's
Among
the
others.
guy that had the website I was telling you about that was
Oh,
writing
okay.
the Quay, Helga Fosk, yeah.
Excellent.
These people are all connected.
Walking the Tree Press, Ross Smith, and other notable academics such as David Salo, Jim Allen, and Verlin Flieger.
Which is somebody that, so Jeremiah has a connection with,
Okay.
with that person as well.
And Jeremiah says, I bet Tolkien would have dug Klingon.
I bet he would.
Well, because at least it's doing linguistics.
Was he alive?
Oh,
Well,
No.
yeah, he was but it wasn't developed,
I don't.
right? And I don't
Right.
did they even use Klingon in the original series?
But guys,
As a
keep
language?
this in
Not
mind.
movies,
Keep this
exactly.
in mind. Tolkien did not own a TV. In fact,
True.
he didn't own a car.
And, right, he was very much against all of
Because
that.
Star Trek 2 would have been.
But he would have dug Klingon anyway.
Yeah, but he wasn't alive when the actual language was coming out.
But definitely,
Star Trek.
No.
he
Star
died
Trek
in
one had Klingon
1973.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
died in
And
73.
that's 70.
After
8 or 9, yeah.
So yeah, it
But-
probably would have.
He died in
They
73.
just missed.
The series, though, the first series was in the 60s.
Right, 67.
Yeah, but
through
they didn't
69,
have any
67.
Klingon language speaking in it.
Oh.
They only
Right, there's no
The
developed
original
that.
Khan episode didn't have any.
Nope.
No.
He wasn't Klingon.
Oh, sorry, not Klingon.
Not
Okay, Star Trek original,
The original was
Next Generation,
The
Seventy-
episode with Khan didn't
79.
have Klingons as well. I thought it had some Klingons.
Yeah.
No, it was just.
They had Klingons. It didn't have Klingon language.
Right, they didn't use
That's
any
what
They
language.
had to build it.
That all came
They had
later.
to build it for next generation.
mid-
Right.
Right.
Well, the first movie,
Right.
first Star Trek movie, they had Klingon because of the one getting incinerated by the.
Not very much.
Yes,
And then
yeah.
the third
But
one,
it was the beginning of it.
by the third one, which would
So,
have been.
That's all
80
Star Trek. All of the Voyager, all of the.
Well,
Okay.
one of the most
Well, anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
one of
Thanks
the
for
mo-
that tangent, Jeremiah.
isn't one of the most unfinished languages and the one that people struggle with the most. I mean, it takes a lot of extrapolation is actually Dwarfish,
Yes.
which actually kind of gets close. I'm not saying it's
But it has
like
the guttural.
yeah, it's got that guttural.
Yeah.
I think we've only got like what 3.
Actually, I think Orcish is closer.
Yeah, might be right.
Don't we only?
Warbeth.
Didn't Tolkien only give us like 3 confirmed words?
No, it's more than that.
Yeah.
You could, I suppose, work off some of the names.
I mean, because he did explain some of the derivations, so you could.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, Richard.
Yeah, he didn't give
We
very
have very
much.
little to go on.
Yeah.
And that's Kudzul is the dwarves.
Kuzdal.
Kudzul.
Kuzdal.
Kuzdul.
That's fun.
You're mispronouncing my name.
Anyway,
Gloin, gloin.
All right.
And as for the
So,
lettering, it's
yes.
an unusual upside down kind of
The runes?
the runes. Yeah, it seems to be like a kind of upside down. The
Which
Elvish
language?
runes. What do you call it? Sorry,
Kangor?
cursive. The
Oh,
cursive.
Okay.
It looks like kind of an upside down cursive because the openings are on the bottom
So are you
instead of
saying
on
that
the
they
top.
ruined it?
Oh.
Okay, the
Okay.
last one. I promise.
What was next for us to do?
I think it would. I think Elvish reminds me a bit of Jewish.
Well, no, actually, apparently it was the dwarves that Tolkien had the closest correlation to the Jewish people.
Didn't he accuse
Okay.
the lack of knowledge of Dwarfen is they only used it in private and never in anything that
Right, it was supposed to be a
public?
secret language that
Ah.
they never shared with others, so that's why there was so little of it.
Well,
They really kept it a secret as they could.
Is that what mine?
I don't know.
Hawk, you have-
I have two here.
but the elves must have learned a couple of
And it's
words.
open to the page.
Didn't the
No,
elves
that's
learn a
ours.
couple of words though?
Was that?
Didn't the elves learn a couple of dwarvish
They may
words?
have over the thousands of years.
Moria.
I forgot to bring them down.
Moria is
I
actually
Richard, do you need one?
Huh? Moria
the
what?
name Moria is actually Elvish.
Well, right, but I'm in the
movie.
movie now. I know how accurate the movie is, right?
You'll get laughed out.
But
Isn't it?
when the dwarf says something nasty to
Oh, yes.
the lady, he did it in Dwarvish, so they assumed that the elves knew a little bit of Dwarvish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, when you're around for thousands of years, you pick up a few things.
You
And there are
recognize
lots of
patterns
things
of
you like
curse words that are used against you. I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, it is almost 2 o'clock. We should probably.
Yes, we should get going on the Farmer Giles of Ham.
So, shall I read the forward?
Please. So you notice everybody now has a copy. Woohoo! That's unusual. Like I said, enough copies to go around. So that worked out well.
All right. Jeremiah, if you have a copy, feel free to
Yes,
read it.
all of you following along. This is reading from Farmer Giles of Ham.
Forward. Of the history of the Little Kingdom, few fragments have survived, but by chance an account of its origin has been preserved. A legend, perhaps, rather than an account, for it is evidently a late compilation full of marvels, derived not from sober annals, but from the popular lays to which its author frequently refers. For him, the events that he records lay already in a distant past, but he seems nonetheless to have lived himself in the lands of the Little Kingdom. Such geographical knowledge as he shows, it is not his strong point, is of that country, while of regions outside it, north or west, he is plainly ignorant. An excuse for presenting a translation of this curious tale, out of its very insular Latin into the modern tongue of the United Kingdom, may be found in the glimpse that it affords of life in a dark period of the history of Britain, not to mention the light that it throws on the origin of some difficult place names. Some may find the character and adventures of its hero attractive in themselves. The boundaries of the Little Kingdom, either in time or space, are not easy to determine from the scanty evidence. Since Brutus came to Britain, many kings and realms have come and gone. The partition under, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, Lochran, Camber, and Albinac, was only the first of many shifting divisions. What with the love of petty independence on the one hand, and on the other the greed of kings for wider realms, the years were filled with swift alternations of war and peace, of mirth and woe, as historians of the reign of Arthur tell us, a time of unsettled frontiers, when men might rise or fall suddenly, and songwriters had abundant material and eager audiences. Somewhere in those long years, after the days of King Cole, maybe, but before Arthur or the 7 kingdoms of the English, we must place the events here related. And their scene is the valley of the Thames, with an excursion northwest to the walls of Wales. The capital of the Little Kingdom was evidently, as is ours, in its southeast corner, but its confines are vague. It seems never to have reached far up the Thames into the west, nor beyond Otmoor to the north. Its eastern borders are dubious. there are indications in a fragmentary legend of Georgius, son of Giles, and his page Suevitorius, Suet, that at one time an outpost against the Middle Kingdom was maintained at Farthinghoe. But that situation does not concern this story, which is now presented without alteration or further comment, though the original grandiose title has been suitably reduced to Farmer Giles of Ham.
So I guess with the pronunciation for Loughran or Loughran, it's whether if it's going to be more Latin-based versus English-based.
Is it
If
Giles?
it's English-based, it'd be Loughran, but if it's Latin, it'd be Loughran.
Well,
Loughran.
And there's some Latin there.
the hint is the Latin title.
Okay, so
Do you
it
want
would
to-
be the Loughran.
Yes.
Chris, do you want to read just the title itself?
Yeah, because
The Latin?
The whole thing, if you want to.
Or anyone else.
Or the big ones.
Ageti.
Agetius?
Agetius.
Agetius.
Probably almost each two, but I still assume it's
Benabavi, Julie,
Ahenobarbus.
Agricole, De Hamo, Domini, De Domito. My kid's gonna beat me in this.
Anyway.
Julia Draconary, Comidius, Regini, Mimi, Regius, F. Specifi, Mira, Tesnora, et Mira, Biffus, Exortus. Or in the vulgar tongue, the rise and wonderful adventures of Farmer Giles, Lord of Tam, Count of Worming Hall, and the King of the Little Kingdom.
Nice.
So I'm a little confused, and maybe you guys know the answer. So is this a translated legend, or is this a?
He made it up as though it were a translated legend.
Oh, okay.
This is one of his many made-up stories
I-
that he makes. Even Middle Earth, he acts as though it was kind of, which was popular this time. Like H.P. Lovecraft did that with Cthulhu, where
Presenting
it was
its
some
history.
archaic thing that was found, and they presented it as though it was being discovered and shared. So Tolkien talks about his
Kinda-
sources and
It's
such.
kind of like the modern day Blair Witch stuff. Found footage
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's
I know
definitely in that
of
same
Blair
vein
Witch,
of
I've never watched
of
it.
I never
basically
watched it.
coming up with such a believable story that you even
Could
invent its
exist.
backstory, you know. Yeah.
The fact that you're not certain is a win. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe this is
Tolkien.
historical. But
Well,
yeah. But it's extrapolated. I mean, he knows so much of all these
I know,
cultures
right?
and countries that it is derivative works, right, of all these different ideas and concepts and stories from these other cultures. That's why it can feel real
But
in
it's
its presentation.
But it's the lore of the Little Kingdom,
yeah, the Little Kingdom,
which is specifically the UK that he is trying
Right.
to create
right,
a cultural.
right.
Ideal.
Although this wasn't his
Yes.
great.
By the way, Brian, I have a nitpick for you.
Okay.
You added an extra word.
Did I?
You said the English when it only in the text it says English.
Oh, I am reading from a OCD.
OCD.
OCR.
Optical character recognition,
Thank you.
as opposed to obsessive compulsive.
Obviously, I wasn't obsessively compulsive, otherwise I would have noticed that. So, OCR thing, so it's not completely.
All right. Want to roll a six-sided dice? Who goes first, or shall I?
Hey, I think
Sure, do you have one
Yeah, that'd
handy?
be fun.
Go for it.
Gee, I wonder how many dice I
There
have.
you
to
go,
have
right
that.
there. All right, Hawk, you're one. Hawk two.
Do you have a weighted
We'll
die?
just roll through. What's that?
Do you have a weighted die?
No.
No, of course not.
I've never bought
Go on,
two
Hawk.
dice. All right, let's start out. So, Farmer Giles of Ham, Aegidius de Homo, was a man who lived in the midmost parts of the island of Britain. In his full name was Ingidius Ahenobarbus Julius Agricola de Homo, for people were richly endowed with names in those days, now long ago, when this island was still happily divided into many kingdoms. Boy, that's the antithesis of somebody. There was more time then, and folly were fewer, so that most men were distinguished. However, those days are now over. So I will in what follows give the man his name shortly, and in the vulgar form. He was Farmer Giles of Ham, and he had a red beard.
Hear, hear.
Here, here. Ham was only a village, but villages were proud and independent still in those days. Farmer Giles had a dog. The dog's name was Garm.
Yay, go.
Dogs had to be content with short names in the vernacular. The book Latin was reserved for their betters. Garm could not talk even dog Latin, but he could use the vulgar tongue, as could most dogs of his day, either to bully or to brag or to wheedle in. Bullying was for beggars and trespassers, bragging for other dogs, and wheedling for his master. Garm was both proud and afraid of Giles, who could bully and brag better than he could. The time was not of hurry or bustle, but bustle has very little to do with business. Men did their work without it, and they got through a great deal of work and of talk. There was plenty to talk about, for memorable events occurred very frequently. But at the moment when this tale begins, nothing memorable had, in fact, happened at Ham for quite a long time, which suited Farmer Giles down to the ground. He was a slow sort of fellow, rather set in his ways, and taken up with his own affairs. He had his hands full, he said, keeping the wolf from the door, that is, keeping himself as fat and comfortable as his father before him. The dog was busy helping him. Neither of them gave much thought to the wide world outside their fields, the village, and the nearest market.
Isn't there kind of I mean, we see the Hobbit kind of has this similar lifestyle
Yes.
and similar background, and I don't know what it is. Tolkien always seems to lean towards this as
This is
even
his
kind of a
utopian ideal.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yes.
he, because of the I don't know as much history as you guys, but sometimes I feel like the way even the movie portrays it is that it just seems like this slow going rural quiet place, and then all of a sudden, they have this adventure where they're pulled out of the middle of their quiet
Yes.
Existence.
quiet existence. Yeah.
Yes, Tolkien equated himself to being a hobbit, and his favorite memories after, so he's born in Bloemfontein, South Africa, moved to England. His father died back in Africa. His mother struggled. She eventually died. They were then adopted by a priest and such, and went through that. But his favorite memories were when they lived in the countryside for a period with family at some point. And it was just rolling grassy hills and trees, and he and his brother would go off and make up their languages, animal languages. And
In fact,
those are his fondest memories.
his Aunt Jane's farm was called Bag End.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so, well, as you get through this, you go, oh, okay. Makes total sense. That is where his heart was. Those are his fondest.
Well, he always said something about the fact of bringing dragons into the world was a kind of a scary thing in body. How did he say it? Something about being in body, he was timid or something along those lines. And I always think whenever I read Giles of Ham that he's almost describing himself in some ways.
Some alter ego.
Yeah, and I think that's every man, that kind of John Bull, that kind of typical British person who prefers a comfortable status quo.
But if push comes to shove,
they will rise to it.
They will rise up. Yes.
If they can get out of the rocking chair.
So, Brian?
But the wide world was there. I think that's where we are.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
Hang on. Jeremiah.
Any comments? Yeah.
The quaint, quiet lifestyle certainly seemed to be Tolkien's ideal, yet Tolkien seems also to present it as a warning, certainly in Lord of the Rings. What was the phrase? You can shut yourselves in, but you cannot forever shut out the world. Look at Paris history, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he says, quote, but it is not your own shire. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. Gildor.
Gildor.
Oh, wow.
And is that when Frodo?
When Frodo meets him on the way to
Yes.
Rivendell, I would guess
Yeah.
so. If it's Gildor.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Okay, go ahead, Brian. Sir.
Okay, I think we're at
But the
Well,
wide
there,
world.
maybe there's a sense of insulation that you feel,
Yes.
even like this almost is kind of I don't know, a tempting. It's almost making you a little bit unaware. Of,
Oh yeah, no,
of
blissfully
what's going
oblivious.
on. Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of like the isolationist attitude after World War I.
the pros and the cons. Yep. But the wide world was there. The forest was not far off, and away west and north were the wild hills and the dubious marches of the mountain country. And among other things, still at large, there were giants, rude and uncultured folk, and troublesome at times. There was one giant in particular, larger and more stupid than his fellows. We find no mention of his name in the histories, but it does not matter. He was very large, his walking stick was like a tree, and his tread was heavy. He brushed elms aside like tall grasses, and he was the ruin of roads and the desolation of gardens, for his great feet made holes in them as deep as wells. If he stumbled into a house, that was the end of it. And all this damage he did wherever he went, for his head was far above the roofs of the houses, and left his feet to look after themselves. He was nearsighted, and also rather deaf. Fortunately, he lived far off in the wild, and seldom visited the lands inhabited by men, at least not on purpose. He had a great tumble-down house away up in the mountains, but he had very few friends owing to his deafness and his stupidity and the scarcity of giants. He used to go out walking in the wild hills and in the empty regions at the feet of the mountains, all by himself.
Doesn't that sound like some politician?
One fine summer's day, this giant went out for a walk and wandered aimlessly along, doing a great deal of damage in the woods. Suddenly he noticed that the sun was setting, and felt that his supper time was drawing near, but he discovered that there was a part of the country that he did not know at all and had lost his way. Making a wrong guess at the right direction, he walked and he walked until it was dark at night. Then he sat down and waited for the moon to rise. Then he walked and walked in the moonlight, striding out with a will, for he was anxious to get home. But he had left his best copper pot on the fire, in fear that the bottom would be burned. But his back was to the mountains, and he was already in the lands inhabited by men. He was indeed now drawing near to the farm of Aegidius Anobarbus Julius Agricola, and the village called, in the vulgar tongue, Ham.
How do you make a wrong guess at the right direction and just kind of...
Oh, this is actually kind of sounds like poetic in some of his phrases.
Yeah. Always thinking about the words he was.
Oh yes.
Well, he was so steeped in it.
Can you get a feel a little bit of the trolls in The Hobbit here? Big oafs.
Let me just interject. For some reason, Google Plus, and I had this problem last week with the 24-hour fundraiser, is disabling comments during the broadcast, which you used to be able to see under the YouTube stream. So if you want to comment and you're not in the chat room or in Google Plus Hangout, you can go to the TolkienScholars.org website and click on the reminder. It's the second link down for today's November meeting, and you can post comments there. And then I'll keep watching and refreshing the page if you have comments or questions. So, sorry, just...
Can I just say, Hawk, as a really kind of squirrel distracted moment here, but how beautiful it is. We're sitting here in Hawk's home, but you can't see through the broadcast, but outside his wall here, he's got a porch, and there's a beautiful view of Mount Spokane. We really do live in an amazing place, and I think I once made a reference to comparing the size of Lonely Mountain and Mount Spokane are very similar. Lonely Mountain would be obviously probably more steep, but the same kind of geographical spread.
And about the same distance.
Yeah,
I don't know. You can't quite
A
get...
bit farther from Baghdad,
a bit farther, but
like living in the valley.
maybe being yes from Mirkwood to the mountain. I think this is about the same distance. And we even have a long lake not too far away from here, don't we?
We do.
But we don't have any bars
We do.
on it.
Sure. We should do something about that. Okay.
We should come together and start a charity to.
No, did you want to read any further there?
Sure. It was a fine night. The cows were in the fields. And Farmer Giles' dog had gone out and gone for a walk on his own account. He had a fancy for moonshine and rabbits. He had no idea, of course, that a giant was also out for a walk. That would have given him a good reason for going out without leave, but a still better reason for staying quiet in the kitchen. At about 2 o'clock, the giant arrived in Farmer Giles' fields, broke the hedges, trampled on the crops, and flattened the mowing grass. In 5 minutes, he had done more damage than the royal fox hunt could have done in 5 days. Garm heard a thump coming along the riverbank, and he ran to the west side of the low hill on which the farmhouse stood, just to see what was happening. Suddenly he saw the giant stride right across the river and tread upon Galathea, the farmer's favorite cow, squashing the poor beast as flat as the farmer could have squashed a black beetle. That was more than enough for Garm. He gave a yelp of fright and bolted home. Quite forgetting that he was without leave, he came and barked and yammered underneath his master's bedroom window. There was no answer for a long time. Farmer Giles was not easily wakened. "Help! Help!" cried Garm. The window opened suddenly, and a well-aimed bottle came flying out.
Richard. "Ow!" said the dog, jumping aside with practiced skill. "Help! Help! Help!" Out popped the farmer's head. "Drat you, dog! What are you doing?" said he. "Nothing," said the dog. "I'll give you nothing. I'll flay the skin off you in the morning," said the farmer, slamming the window. "Help! Help! Help!" cried the dog. Out came Giles' head again. "I'll kill you if you make another sound," he said. "What's come to you, you fool?" "Nothing," said the dog, "but something's come to you." "What do you mean?" said Giles, startled in the midst of his rage. Never before had Garm answered him saucily. "There's a giant in your fields, an enormous giant, and he's coming this way," said the dog. "Help! Help!"
He was trampling?
Right, I'm sorry, I was suppressing a rabbit trail. "He is trampling on your sheep. He is stamped on poor Galathea.
Galathea.
Everybody's a critic. And she's flat as a doormat. Help! Help! He's bursting all your hedges and he's crushing all your crops. You must be bold and quick, master, or you will soon have nothing left. Help! Garm began to howl. "Shut up," said the farmer, and he shut the window. "Lord of mercy," he said to himself, and through the night it was warm, he shivered and shook. "Go back to bed and don't be a fool," said his wife, "and drown that dog in the morning. There's no call to believe what the dog says. They'll tell any tale when caught, taunt or thieving, truant or thieving." "Maybe, Agatha," he said, "and maybe not. But there's something going on in my fields, or Garm's a rabbit. That dog is frightened. And why should he come yammering in the night when he could sneak in the back door with the milk in the morning?" "Don't stand there arguing," said she. "If you believe the dog, then take his advice. Be bold and quick." "Easier said than done," answered Giles, for indeed he believed quite half of Garm's tale. In the small hours of the night, giants seemed less unlikely. Still, property is property, and Farmer Giles had a short way with trespassers that few could outface. So he pulled on his breeches and went down into the kitchen and took his blunderbuss from the wall. Some may well ask what a blunderbuss was. Indeed, this very question, it is said, was put to the 4 wise clerks of Oxford, and after thought they replied, "A blunderbuss is a short gun with a large bore firing many balls or slugs, and is capable of doing execution with a limited range without exact aim." Now superseded in civilized countries by other firearms.
However, Farmer Giles' blunderbuss had a wide mouth that opened like a horn, and it did not fire balls or slugs, but anything that he could spare to stuff in. And it did not do execution, because he seldom loaded it, and never let it off. The sight of it was usually enough for his purpose. And this country was not yet civilized, For the blunderbuss was not superseded. I'm sorry, I have a couple letters missing. It was not indeed the only kind of gun that there was, and rare at that. People preferred bows and arrows and used gunpowder mostly for fireworks. Gandalf. Well then, Farmer Giles took down the blunderbuss, and he put in a good charge of powder, just in case extreme measures should be required. And into the wide mouth he stuffed old nails and bits of wire, pieces of broken pot, bones and stones and other rubbish. Then he drew on his top boots and overcoat, and he went out through the kitchen garden. The moon was low behind him, and he could see nothing worse than the long black shadows of bushes and trees. But he could hear a dreadful stumping coming up the side of the hill. He did not feel either bold or quick, whatever Agatha might say, but he was more anxious about his property than his skin. So, feeling a bit loose about the belt, he walked towards the brow of the hill. Suddenly, up over the edge of it, the giant's face appeared, pale in the moonlight, which glittered in his large round eyes. His feet were still far below, making holes in the fields. The moon dazzled the giant, and he did not see the farmer, but Farmer Giles saw him and was scared out of his wits. He pulled the trigger without thinking, and the blunderbuss went off with a staggering bang. But lucky it was pointed more or less at the giant's large, ugly face. Out flew the rubbish, and the stones and the bones, and the bits of crock and wire, and half a dozen nails. And since the range was indeed limited by chance, and no choice of farmers, many of these things stuck the giant. A piece of pot went in his eye, and a large nail stuck in his nose.
Last,
I'm gonna get a nail stuck in my nose.
said the giant in his vulgar fashion. I'm stung. The noise had made no impression on him. He was rather deaf. He did not like the nail. It was a long time since he had met any insect fierce enough to pierce his thick skin. But he had heard tell that away east in the fens there were dragonflies that could bite like hot pincers. He thought that he must have run into something of the kind. Nasty and healthy parts, evidently, said he. I shan't go any further this way tonight. So he picked up a couple of sheep off the hillside to eat when he got home, and went back over the river, making off about northwest at a great pace. He found his way home again in the end, for he was at last going in the right direction, but the bottom was burned out off of his copper pot. Oh man. As for Farmer Giles, when the blunderbuss went off, it knocked him over flat on his back, and there lay looking at the sky and wondering if the giant's feet would miss him as they passed by. But nothing happened, and the stumping died away in the distance. So he got up, rubbed his shoulder, and picked up the blunderbuss. Then suddenly he heard the sound of cheering people. Most of the people of Ham had been looking out their window. A few of them had put on their clothes and come out after the giant had gone away. Some were now running up the hill shouting. The villagers had heard the horrible thump of the giant's feet, and most of them had immediately got under the bedclothes. Some had got under the beds, but Garm was both proud and frightened of his master. He thought him terrible and splendid when he was angry, and he naturally thought that any giant would think the same. So as soon as he saw Giles come out with the blunderbuss, a sign of great wrath as a rule, he rushed off to the village, barking and crying, "Come out, come out, come out, get up, get up. Come and see my great master. He is bold and quick. He is going to shoot a giant for trespassing." Wow. The top of the hill could be seen from most of the houses. When the people and the dog saw the giant's face rise above it, they quailed and held their breath, and all but the dog among them thought that this would prove a matter too big for Giles to deal with. Then the blunderbuss went bang, and the giant turned suddenly and went away. And in their amazement and their joy, they clapped and cheered. And Garm nearly barked his head off.
Jeremiah comments. He said, "Oh geez, yeah, I'm not going to share a shot of my back garden shed." They said, "Laugh out loud. A dog which answers saucily." Fun fact: just looked up Garm. Garm is Old Norse Garmr, Garmr, whose meaning etymology is unknown, but is a dog or wolf associated with the underworld and the forces of destruction. Of course it's Old Norse. What else?
What I think is funny is I can imagine him sitting there, laying there, and looking at the stars after he shot that blunderbuss. They don't say that, but can you imagine it's clear out and he's just laying on the grass?
Waiting to be squished. And of course, when we did Tolkien last year, 2 years ago, with the giant theme.
That was this year.
That was this year. Oh, that was this year.
They all run together.
Oh, too many events. The theme was giants, and I took, because Tolkien actually didn't write that much about giants in Middle Earth, went to all his sources and comments in letters and everywhere I could find about his giants and how he did derive them in Middle Earth and then extrapolated from all that. So there's a lot of research in that module, and I list all that research in the actual adventure module itself. And then Drake and I co-wrote that. Drake's my youngest son that we're talking about, who's an aspiring writer. And the premise is this giant starts stomping through and crushing a village because he's lost and doesn't see that he's crushing. Like, he's actually a nice guy, but the expectation is the adventurers will try to kill him, right? Because that's what some bloodthirsty adventurers will do. But if they give any opportunity to talk to him, they'll realize he's actually a really nice guy. But then they run into his two other brothers, and each one gets a little worse and a little worse.
Billy Goat's rough. Yeah.
Well, because using his sources, I was able to find these other giants that he specifically referenced, use the names, and I tied in with Wagner because they both came from the Norse references for the giants.
Yes.
So it all tied together beautifully.
How cool is
with the
that?
giants. So this story right here was directly.
Okay, now you've got to tell us then, since I wasn't there.
Yes.
What was the conclusion of the?
Well, it depends on what what choices the players make. So initially, if they befriend him, he takes them to their place, or if they sneak into his place, he wants to feed them. He's the friend of this fellow. He's like, "Oh, you got to meet my brother. He's going to be here tomorrow. Please stick around." The brother shows up and seems, and the first giant, I think Dime was his name, which again is from sources, is very friendly but not very bright, and can't see very well or hear very well or any of that. He's like, "Hey." So then his next older brother shows up and is very friendly, obviously more intelligent, says he has a small keep in the mountains. Why don't you come with him? We'll have a little feast and all this. Different ways to encourage it.
We'll have a feast.
So you go to there, and sure enough, you end up in prison
Yes.
by a bunch of orcs, a small goblin town, as he goes off to get the eldest brother, who is wicked, who has a large castle, right? So you get the progression of the fairy tales.
Sure.
It's in threes and all of that.
Yeah.
And so we have Thistlebroi and I forget the other one. But, so that brother is actually in league with the Witch King because this is near Angmar. We're getting closer and closer to Angmar.
Right.
So we started in the Ettenmoors area. It all fit beautifully. As I did the research, this is that derivative stuff that gaming can do.
Doesn't Edinburgh have something to do with giants?
Right, yeah, that is the land of the giants and such. Yeah, the Ettenmoor of giants.
Even though he makes very, very few references to.
Correct. There was an entire area of trolls and giants, which are the Ettenmoors.
And they're troll shaws.
But they're next to each other.
Yeah.
And the giants usually in the mountains, so that's heading towards the mountains.
What's funny is that because Tolkien and C.S. Lewis spent so much time together, you look at C.S. Lewis's giant from Narnia, and he's kind of the same.
Right. Well, there's Norse.
Same
Norse story.
Rummelbuffen. He's
yes.
kind of a nice. Yeah.
He's kind of a nice guy, but he's not real bright, And what I find interesting is,
so you might want to. I'll give you a link.
If you guys,
adventure.
Chesterton
Yes.
The
Chesterton does the same thing.
was Chesterton actually wrote an essay talking about giants,
Really?
and I believe that a lot of what the giants and how they were portrayed in Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's was not to say that they didn't have some creative say in what they were doing. I'm saying that what they were doing was somewhat original, but I believe that there was a lot of Chestertonian overtones sometimes about giants and how they came about in Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's.
I think especially Lewis was, but both of them could have been influenced by that. But I think Tolkien, I think definitely you could make an argument there's a connection with Chesterton, but then also of course both of those guys read so widely of the old sources.
Yes.
But they certainly did. You're right, Corey. Invest them in a kind of a more maybe an updated kind of version of a giant, maybe.
Yeah, I just finished one of Chesterton's books, Orthodoxy, and it reminds me so much of a lot of Lewis's Mere Christianity radio talks, and the two are obviously linked.
Yeah, and Chesterton has some really great kind of sci-fi, fantasy stuff that I've read as well.
I'm gonna have to.
Well, his comment about
The Man Who Was Thursday is awesome.
right. Well, his comment though in one of his essays about being a small person in a large world seems to be something that catches the attention of Lewis and even Tolkien, because the hobbits were, what were they? They were smaller than man.
The big folk.
And they always seem to be running around, trying to somehow, deal with the world when it was in some way slightly bigger than it was to normal folk, so to say.
Good point.
It's kind of interesting.
To a smaller scale.
It's kind of interesting how the smarter the giant gets, the more evil he gets.
Right.
Right.
I played with that. But,
Yeah.
So that module is available, or should be. I'll double check that on the TolkienMoot.org website. Under so we've been doing
We'll get a
Tolkien
link
since
to it.
2005, and
We'll put that together later.
yeah, we'll have a link to it, but it'll be in the archives. All the adventures are. So
Return.
yes. So, hooray! They shouted. That will learn him. Master Egidius has given him what for. Now he will go home and die and serve him right and proper. Then they all cheered again together. But even as they cheered, they took note for their own profit that after all this blunderbuss could really be fired. There had been some debate in the village inns on that point, but now the matter was settled. Farmer Giles had little trouble with trespassers after that.
Second Amendment. What?
Side note, blunderbuss was a historical
Yes. Yep, totally, and totally was like that.
But what's hilarious is that this is totally anachronistic. That he's putting a blunderbuss into a time period before King Arthur.
Yes. Yes.
So I think he's playing around.
Exactly.
But in some ways, it's like this unusual weapon. Like, I mean, it looks like a horn of all things. I mean,
It's very British.
Like a quaint.
Well, he's not letting the truth get in the way of a good story. As my great grandfather James Ivers the first, second, also known as Jimmy the Sport, would say. All right. When all seemed safe, some of the bolder folk came right up the hill and shook hands with Farmer Giles. A few, the parson and the blacksmith and the miller, and one or two other persons of importance, slapped him on the back. That did not please him. His shoulder was very sore. But he felt obliged to invite them into his house. They sat round in the kitchen, drinking his health and loudly praising him. He made no effort to hide his yawns, but as long as the drink lasted, they took no notice. By the time they had all had one or two, and the farmer 2 or 3, he began to feel quite bold. When they had all had 2 or 3, and he himself 5 or 6, he felt as bold as his dog thought him. They parted good friends, and he slapped their backs heartily. His hands were large, red, and thick, So he had his revenge. Next day, he found that the news had grown in the telling, and he had become an important local figure. By the middle of the next week, the news had spread to all the villages within 20 miles. He had become the hero of the countryside. Very pleasant, he found it. Next market day, he got enough free drink to float a boat. That is to say, he nearly had his fill, and came home singing old heroic songs. At last, what's that?
Oh, I
can just imagine doing this. After being with the Inklings, slapping them heartily on the back, and walking home singing.
Yeah.
getting his revenge.
Yes,
But this is so reminiscent of the dwarves.
Yes.
Because the dwarves are
Yes,
in
inviting
his
themselves,
house.
yes.
They've just pretty much invited themselves in, and they're eating, and they've gotten to the point. And I think what happens is that even Bilbo finally gets kind of to the point where
Yes.
this is enough, man.
Technically, Gandalf invited the dwarves.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
But still,
it was sort of
uninvited guests.
Yeah, by proxy.
Yeah.
By the way, Jeremiah's not able to read out loud, is he? He's not. He's listening in.
If you wanted to,
was just
Jeremiah,
thinking,
if you wanted
remember
to, we could put you on speaker here, no problem.
I was going to say, remember when Tom a couple
Yeah.
months ago
Yeah.
joined us and he was able to interact?
You would be most welcome to, Jeremiah, if you wanted to read out loud with us. Would you be interested? He does say, there's a saucy dog and the gun in pre-Arthurian times in the odd thing.
Really?
Or no. Oh, wait, no. He says, there's a saucy dog and the gun in pre-Arthurian times is the odd thing? Nah. I'll just listen, thanks. He's like, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But, yeah. So he's thinking that was an odd thing. He's questioning whether that was an odd thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the dog talking is no big deal, right?
Yeah. The saucy dog, exactly.
Well, it was in the vulgar tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Right. If the dog was talking Latin, then we'd be
Right,
impressed.
we're okay with that. We're going to pick on
That's
the
just
fact
too
that
much
there's a
to
plunder.
believe,
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, I think my character I love the most in this story is Garm.
Yeah.
And Tolkien and dogs. I love.
Right, in the Silmarillion.
It's so really who on the hound?
Rover Random, right.
Yes.
Rover Random,
There's
totally.
just, he always has great
Rover
dog
Random's
characters.
great. I read that to my kids. They loved it. All right. Do you want me to continue or do you want me to rotate?
Oh, let's rotate.
My kids love it too.
At last, even the king got to hear of it. The capital of that realm, the middle kingdom of the island in those happy days, was some 20 leagues distant from Hams, and they paid little heed at court, as a rule, of the doings of rustics in the provinces. But so prompt an expulsion of a giant so injurious seemed worthy of note, and of some little courtesy. So in due course, that is, in about 3 months, and on the feast of St. Michael, the king sent a magnificent letter. It was written in red upon white parchment, and expressed the royal approbation of our loyal subject and well-beloved Aegidius Ahenobarbus Julius Agricola de Hamo. The letter was signed with a red blot, but the court scribe had added, Ego Augustus Bonifacius Ambrosius Aurelianus Antoninus Pius et Magnificus Dux Rex Tyrannus et Basilis Mediterraneum Parfium, and a large red seal was attached.
It wouldn't be proper for him to be outdone by.
Of course. And the last part, that you can see the name there is, Ego means myself, Augustus Bonifacius Ambrosius Aurelianus, which is it's a poke at Merlin, or actually somebody, character from Arthurian Tales.
Right.
Ambrosius Aurelianus, and then Antonius Pius, the Pius and the Magnificent, Duke, King, Lord, and I can't remember what Basilius means, but master of the Middle Kingdom.
Of the part of the Mediterranean, right?
Part of the, maybe it's of Middle Earth, actually, I think that's referring to. Mediterranean.
Mediterranean was Latin for RC. The Romans considered it
RC, yes, the Holy See.
No, not like that.
Oh,
A
But
sea
Terra-
that was the possession of the Romans.
Yeah.
The sea was the position of the Romans, but terra means land, not sea. So medi means middle, and terra
Oh,
means land.
I missed that. Yeah.
So I think it's a poke at Middle Earth there. Anyway, so the document was plainly genuine. It afforded great pleasure to Giles and was much admired, especially when it was discovered that one could get a seat and a drink by the farmer's fire by asking to look at it. Oh, you're kidding.
better than the testimonial was the accompanying gift. The king sent a belt and a long sword. To tell the truth, the king had never used the sword himself. It belonged to the family and had been hanging in his armory time out of mind. The armorer could not say how it came there, or what might be the use of it. Plain heavy swords of that kind were out of fashion at court just then, so the king thought it the very thing for a present to a rustic. But Farmer Giles was delighted, and his local reputation became enormous.
Isn't there a poke here about how people in the city kind of treat people in the they're
Yes.
Country mouse and city mouse.
And as for the blunderbuss, I wasn't really saying that it was odd in the sense of the story, but I was thinking more in the sense of it made him an eccentric character, but that he doesn't carry a sword or anything.
Well, he's a crazy farmer with the gun. Get off my land there, boys! Get off my lawn!
Yes, it's a British stereotype of the farmer who threatens.
Yeah.
With a pig.
Slackers!
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Well, because our sense of private property very much comes from that sense in which
Yes.
a man's house is his castle, and that was very.
And the British have a lot more of that sense than us silly Americans.
After their long
Jeremiah?
serfdom and everything. Oh, say that again.
That the British have a much better sense of private property is private
Well, that's a very interesting question because
than us Americans.
I think they are more private than we are
Yes.
in terms of that.
Certainly more reserved, yeah.
But in certain ways, you'd be surprised. For example,
Yeah.
over there,
Oh,
you
yes.
can walk
You can
on
walk all
long
the way
established.
through, yes.
There's these footpaths that have been there for hundreds of years, predating automobiles, when people had to cross over farmers' fields to get to some other town for market.
Yes.
And you could go right through somebody's property if you stuck on the path, and
Yes.
they would never debate that. Whereas here, you would never dream of just crossing over huge amounts of people's private property without knowing you're going to be in danger of trespassing.
Yeah. Although here through our neighborhood,
Yeah.
we have the neighbors have all like they open their gates so there's hiking trails all through here because we're on the mountainside.
Oh,
here.
really?
So we as a community,
Yes.
there's somebody made some steps to make it easier to come up this hill from the highway to cut through here.
Which is very
So that's
normal in country settings.
right, and we're kind of in
Yes.
that transition between here.
Oh, so maybe it's not British American, it's more rural versus.
Right, because
Yes.
rural you
Urban
have
sense.
there's a little bit more of that friendliness rather than because to survive in a dense city, there's a lot of psychology on this. You end up having to create that little buffer. I mean, look at Japan where the culture is you have to create that inner world to get through, to have your own inner private world to survive being act together like that.
Right.
So that's, I think, related more to space.
So
And
private property and gun rights and Farmer Giles.
yeah.
Boy, I didn't really realize this was a political treatise.
It was very much so.
Yes.
Well,
We made no bones about it.
the
That
giant
infernal
was the,
combustion engine.
isn't the giant a representative of the mayor?
Maybe.
A mayor.
Sorry, no, you were reading. Go ahead.
Plot thickens. Giles had much enjoyed the turn of events. So did his dog. He never got his promised whipping. Giles was a man according to his lights. In his heart, he gave a fair share to the credit of Garm, though he never went so far as to mention it. He continued to throw hard words and hard things at the dog when he felt inclined, but he winked at many little outings. Garm took to walking far afield. The farmer went about with a high step, and luck smiled on him. The autumn and early winter work went well. All seemed set fair until the dragon came.
Dun, dun, dun.
The end.
Roll credits.
Tune in next month.
In those days, dragons were already getting scarce in the island. None had been seen in the Middleland realm of Augustus Bonifacius for many a year. There were, of course, the dubious marches in the uninhabited mountains westward and northward, but they were there. No, I skipped a sentence. But they were a long way off. In those parts, once upon a time, there had dwelt a number of dragons of one kind and another, and they had made raids far and wide. But the Middle Kingdom was in those days famous for the daring of the king's knights, and so many stray dragons had been killed or returned with grave damage that the others gave up going that way. It was still the custom for dragon's tail to be served up at the king's Christmas feast. That must have been getting up pretty rare.
Oh,
Thing. And each year a knight was chosen for the duty of hunting. He was supposed to be set out upon St. Nicholas's Day and come home with a dragon's tail not later than eve of the feast. But for many years now, the royal cook had made a marvelous confection, a mock dragon's tail cake and almond paste, with cunning scales of hard icing sugar.
anybody wants to know for my birthday? I want a cake like that.
When's your birthday?
9/11.
Oh yes.
Wait a minute, which saint is Saint Nicholas?
So that'd be the same St. Nicholas that morphed into Santa Claus. So that would be December 6th. In case
Oh,
you're
that's Saint Nicholas. So
And you need to come back
by the 12th day of Christmas and have it during the Christmas holiday, which was 12 days long.
And it's not clear here whether or not it was the first day of Christmas or one of the later ones. But at the very minimum, this trip had to be completed or about 18 days. So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Nothing like lizard tail for
Yeah.
It chose
required
it's quite tasty, I know. Very spicy. Has a bit of fire to it.
Yes, real good stuff.
The chosen knight then carried this into the hall on Christmas Eve, while the fiddles played and the trumpets rang. The mock dragon's tail was eaten after dinner on Christmas Day, and everybody said, to please the cook, that it tasted much better than the real tail. That was the situation when a real dragon turned up again. The giant was largely to blame. After his adventure, he used to go about in the mountains visiting his scattered relations more than had been his custom and much more than they liked. For he was always trying to borrow a large copper pot. But whether he got the loan of one or not, he would sit and talk in his long-winded, lumbering fashion about the excellent country down the way east and all the wonders of the wide world. He got it into his head that he was a great and daring traveler. A nice land, he would say, pretty fat, soft to the feet, plenty to eat for the taking. Cows, you know, and sheep all over the place, easy to spot if you look carefully. But what about the people, said they. I never saw any, said he, and there is not a night to be seen or heard, my dear fellows. Nothing worse than a few stinging flies by the river. Why don't you go back and stay there, said they. Oh, well, there's no place like home, they say, said he. But maybe I shall go back one day when I have a mind. And anyway, I went there once, which is more than most folk can say. Now, how about that copper pot?
Before you, I want to interject Jeremiah. We were talking about walking through yards. He said, yes, I went into my neighbor's yards all the time for lost balls, etc. Kids get told that's not allowed over here. But I suppose land is such a premium here. My back garden looks not much larger than the room you guys are sitting in, and that's fairly average.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And then, let's see if there's anybody else. Oh, and we picked up a couple more people on YouTube just subscribing or watching. Just to inform you, I did not intentionally disable comments. Google Plus has been doing this lately.
No, Google Plus has unlinked business accounts from between YouTube and Google.
No, that's still working for me.
Okay.
But what's happened is, so I did a 24-hour fundraiser broadcast last week for the local children's hospital for Afterlife.
All right.
And the broadcasts themselves, the comments seem to be disabled. There must be some settings. I think now they put it into the, I just haven't figured it out. But it used to be by default you could comment on an active YouTube stream that was being simulcast. And for whatever reason it's disabled, and I apologize. Now, if you want to comment so we can respond to you, A, you can join our Hangout if you wish, or B, go to tolkienscholars.org and click on the November meeting reminder. And at the bottom, just comment. I've enabled anonymous comments so you can hurry and post questions and comments and requests and such for this meeting or future meetings. And welcome to the stream, those of you who just joined.
Yep. Hi. Hello.
Go ahead, Chris.
And these rich lands, they would hurriedly ask, these delectable regions full of undependent cattle, which way do they lie? And about how far off? Oh, he would answer, away east or southeast, but it's a long journey. And then he would give such an exaggerated account of the distance that he had walked and the woods, hills, and plains that he had crossed that none of the other less long-legged giants ever set out. Still, the talk got about. Then the warm summer was followed by a hard winter. It was bitter cold in the mountains, and food was scarce. The talk got louder. Lowland sheep and kine from the deep pastures were much discussed. The dragons picked up their ears. They were hungry, and the rumors were attractive. So, knights are mythical.
Nice spin.
Actually, I have a joke about that. What does a dragon think of a knight? He's an M&M. He melts in the mouth, not in the hand.
Well, no. Do not meddle in the affairs of dragons, for you are crunchy and taste good with ketchup. Yes.
So knights are mythical, said the younger and less experienced dragons. We always thought so. At least they may be getting rare, thought the older and wiser worms. Far and few and no longer to be feared. There was one dragon who was deeply moved, must have been a young one. Chrysophlax Dives was his name, for he was of ancient and imperial lineage and very rich. He was cunning, inquisitive, greedy, well armored, but not over bold.
That does beg the question: what exactly a bite of kale was going to taste like? If it's armored, what are we doing? Are we going to chip a tooth on like a piece of gold
It's
or
like a
something?
fillet,
Yeah. It's like armadillo. You just scoop out the innards.
But this does remind me a little bit of Smaug.
Yes.
Cunning, inquisitive, greedy, well armored.
So, is his name Trump?
Oh,
Let's not go there.
But at any rate, he was not in the least afraid of flies or insects or of any sort or size, and he was mortally hungry. So one winter's day, about a week before Christmas, not very good planning, Chrysophlax spread his wings and took off. He landed quietly in the middle of the night, plump in the heart of the midland realm of Augustus Bonifacius Rex et Basilius. He did a deal of damage in a short while, smashing and burning and devouring sheep, cattle, and horses. This was in a part of the land a long way from Ham, but Garm got the fright of his life. He had gone off on a long expedition, Roverandom, and taking advantage of his master's favor, he had ventured to spend a night or two away from home. He was following an engaging scent along the eaves of a wood when he turned the corner and came suddenly upon a new and alarming smell. He ran indeed slap into the tail of Chrysophlax Dives, who had just landed. Never did a dog turn his own tail round and bolt home swifter than Garm. The dragon, hearing the yelp, turned and snorted, but Garm was already far out of range. He ran all the rest of the night and arrived home about breakfast time.
"Help, help," he cried outside the back door. Giles heard and did not like the sound of it. It reminded him that unexpected things may happen when all seems to be going well. The wife, "Let that dreaded dog in," said he, "and take a stick to him." Poor dog. I just feel so bad for him. Garm came bundling into the kitchen with his eyes darting and his tongue hanging out. "Help!" he cried. "Now what have you been doing this time?" said Giles, throwing a sausage at him. "Nothing," panted Garm, too flustered to give heed to the sausage. "Well, stop doing it or I'll skin you," said the farmer. "I've done no wrong. I didn't mean no harm," said the dog. "But I came on a dragon accidental-like and it frightened me." The farmer choked in his beer. Out the nose. "Dragon," he said, "drat you for good for nothing, nosy Parker. What do you want to go and find a dragon for at this time of the year, and me with my hands full? Where was it?" "Oh, north, over the hills and far away beyond the standing stones and all," said the dog. "Oh, away there," said Giles, mildly relieved. "They're queer folk in these parts, I've heard tell, and aught might happen in their land. Let them get on with it. Don't come worrying me with worriting me with such tales. Get out." Garm got out and spread the news all over the village. He did not forget to mention that his master was not scared in the least. Quite cool he was, and he went on with his breakfast. People chatted about it pleasantly at their doors. "How like old times," they said. "Just as Christmas is coming, so seasonable. How pleased the king will be. He will be able to have a real tale this Christmas."
He hasn't had real tailwinds.
Such a long time. Oh, careful.
As soon as that came out of my mouth.
Yes.
Oops. Sorry.
But more news came in the next day. The dragon, it appeared, was exceptionally large and ferocious. He was doing terrible damage. "What about the king's knights?" people began to say.
Jeremiah said, "Dragon tail is served with a pair of pliers like fresh lobster." I'm thinking more like coconut with a chisel and a hammer.
Yeah.
I'm imagining it's like pulling ball bearings out of something.
Oh,
you know?
You do know that every village has a blacksmith.
Right.
Okay, Jeremiah, can you do a check for us on Chrysophylax
Oh, yeah, see if
divus and see if there's any particular meaning to the parts of the name?
Actually, I did research that
Did you?
several years ago into the dragon theme for Tolkien, but I
Do you
don't remember
remember?
anymore. That was like 5 years ago.
All right.
Isn't that a stone? A specific kind of stone?
Chrysostom, who's a guy, early church father, he was called that because he had a golden mouth, and I don't know which part meant gold, or which whether chryso meant gold or mouth. Maybe it was mouth. I'm not sure.
We'll find out.
Well,
Sure,
he was rich. This
The
dragon.
dragon.
This dragon was rich.
Maybe gold. Yeah.
So gold mouth.
Gold might be the more
Sure.
logical connection.
Is this like a? I mean, it says he was rich, and some of you said that it might be young because he was so taken with the story of all this stuff. So do you think he's
A
kind of
young, rich,
like
doesn't know better.
yeah, exactly.
No, it described
He's
him as
kind of
old and cautious, I think.
Is it?
Didn't it? Not old.
No, they
not
said
old.
he was of ancient lineage, but they didn't say.
Yeah.
So I was thinking more like
Maybe.
what like a duke's son or something
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
feel like, you know.
Entitled nobility.
Cunning, inquisitive, greedy, well armored, but not over bold.
Maybe he's in between. Maybe he's middle-aged, like, Dragon's midlife crisis.
Yeah.
He was of ancient imperial lineage, very rich.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
Others had already asked the same question about what about the king's knights. Indeed, messengers were now reaching the king from the villages most afflicted by chrysophylax. And they said to him as loudly and as often as they dared, "Lord, what of your knights?" But the knights did nothing. Their knowledge of the dragon was still quite unofficial. So the king brought the matter to their notice, fully and formally, asking for necessary action at their early convenience. He was greatly displeased when he found that their convenience would not be early at all, and was indeed daily postponed. Yet the excuses of the knights were undoubtedly sound. First of all, The royal cook had already made the dragon's tail for that Christmas,
Oh.
being a man who believed in getting things done in good time. It would not do at all to offend him by bringing in a real tail at the last minute.
Oh, no, no.
He was a very valuable servant. Never mind the tail! Cut his head off and put an end to him! Cried the messengers from the villages most nearly affected. But Christmas had arrived, and most unfortunately, a grand tournament had been arranged for St. John's Day. Knights of many realms had been invited and were coming to compete for a valuable prize. It was obviously unreasonable to spoil the chances of the Midland Knights by sending their best men off on a dragon hunt before the tournament was over. After that came the New Year holiday. But each night the dragon had moved, and each move had brought him nearer to Ham. On the night of New Year's Day, people could see a blaze in the distance. The dragon had settled in a wood about 10 miles away, and it was burning merrily. He was a hot dragon when he felt in the mood. After that, people began to look at Farmer Giles and whisper behind his back. It made him very uncomfortable, but he pretended not to notice it. The next day, the dragon came several miles nearer. Then Farmer Giles himself began to talk loudly of the scandal of the king's knights. "I should like to know what they do to earn their keep," said he. "So should we," said everyone in Ham. But the miller added, "Some men still get knighthood by sheer merit, I am told. After all, our good Gideus here is already a knight in a manner of speaking. Did not the king send in a red letter and a sword?" Oops. "There's more to knighthood than a sword," said Giles. "There's dubbing and all that, or so I understand. Anyway, I've my own business to attend to." "Oh, but the king would do the dubbing, I don't doubt, if he were asked," said the miller. "Let us ask him, before it is too late." Nay, said John. "Dubbing is not for my sort. I am a farmer, and proud of it. A plain honest man, and honest men fare ill at court, they say. It is more in your line, Master Miller." The parson smiled, not at the farmer's retort, for Giles and the miller were always giving one another as good as they got, being bosom enemies, as the saying was in Ham. The parson had suddenly been struck with a notion that pleased him, but he said no more at that time. The miller was not so pleased, and he scowled. "Plain, certainly, and honest perhaps," said he, "but do you have to go to court and be a knight before you kill a dragon? Courage is all that is needed. As only yesterday I heard Master Aegidius declare, surely he has as much courage as any knight." All the folk standing by shouted, "Of course not!" and "Yes, indeed! 3 cheers for the hero of Ham!" Then Farmer Giles went home feeling very uncomfortable. He was finding that a local reputation may require keeping up, and that may prove awkward. He kicked the dog and hid the sword in a cupboard in the kitchen. Up till then it had hung over the fireplace.
The next day the dragon moved to the neighboring village of Quercetum, Oakley in the vulgar tongue. He ate not only sheep and cows and 1 or 2 persons of tender age, but he ate the parson too. Rather rashly the parson had sought to dissuade him from his evil ways. Then there was a terrible commotion. All the people of Ham came up the hill headed by their own parson, and they waited on Farmer Giles. "We look to you," they said, and they remained standing round and looking until the farmer's face was redder than his beard. "When are you going to start?" they asked. "Well, I can't start today, and that's a fact," said he. "I've a lot on hand with my cowman sick and all. I'll see about it." They went away, but in the evening it was rumored that the dragon had moved even nearer, so they all came back. "We look to you, Master Aegidius," they said. "Well," said he, "it's very awkward for me just now. My mare has gone lame, and the lambing has started. I'll see about it as soon as may be." So they went away once more, not without some grumbling and whispering. The miller was sniggering. The parson stayed behind and could not be got rid of. He invited himself to supper and made some pointed remarks. He even asked what had become of the sword, and insisted on seeing it. It was lying in a cupboard on a shelf hardly long enough for it, and as soon as Farmer Giles brought it out, in a flash it leaped from the sheet, which the farmer dropped as if it had been hot. The parson sprang to his feet, upsetting his beard. He picked the sword up carefully and tried to put it back in the sheath, but it would not go so much as a foot in, and it jumped clean out again as soon as he took his hand off the hilt. Dear me, this is very peculiar, said the parson, and he took a good look at both scabbard and blade. He was a lettered man, but a farmer could only spell out large uncials with difficulty, and was none too sure of the reading even of his own name. That is why he had never given any heed to the strange letters that could be dimly seen on sheath and sword. As for the king's armorer, he was so accustomed to runes, names, and other signs of power and significance upon swords and scabbards, that he had not bothered his head about them. He thought them out of date anyway.
So we're getting down to the last 5 minutes of our meeting, and we're almost to the halfway mark, which if next month we jump into it right at the 2 o'clock, I think will work out. And if we ended up pushing into a third session, that's not the end of the world. But I'm looking for a good stopping point. Right, close. Maybe page 152 where there's a gap there.
We should at least get a detail biter a little bit, which is the next little bit.
Yeah, so there's about 6 more pages I think we can squeeze in. But page 152, it says, unless held with main strength, and then the farmer goes Falconer. I think,
Sure.
that's a good stopping point.
I've got to pick up my kid.
Right, exactly. So let's,
Actually, the break at the end of the page.
Yeah.
Can you stay for a couple more minutes, Chris, or not?
Just a few.
Okay, so we better
But
not go too far.
Not to the whole.
if you see a
not
break
all
coming
6
up that
pages.
looks good, then
There
that's
is a
fine.
break right there.
Okay, well then go for it.
But the parson looked long, and he frowned. He had expected to find some lettering on the sword or on the scabbard, and that was indeed the idea that had come to him the day before. But now he was surprised at what he saw, for letters and signs there were, to be sure, but he could not make head or tail of them. There's an inscription on the sheath, and some epigraphical signs are visible upon the sword, he said. Indeed, said Giles, and what may that amount to? The characters are archaic and these languages barbaric. And the language barbaric, said the parson, to gain time. A little closer inspection will be required. He begged the loan of the sword for the night, and the farmer let him have it, with pleasure. When the parson got home, he took down many learned books from his shelves, and he sat up far into the night. Next morning it was discovered that the dragon had moved nearer still. All the people of Ham barred their doors and shuttered their windows, and those that had cellars went down into them and sat shivering in the candlelight. But the parson stole out and went from door to door, and he told to all who would listen through a crack or a keyhole what he discovered in his study. Our good Egidius, he said, by the king's grace, is now the owner of Cotamortix, the famous sword that in popular romances is more vulgarly called Tailbiter.
Is that the break?
Actually, you kind of passed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, maybe we can just leave it right there.
Yeah.
Well, the only topic is
So
the
147.
Yeah,
first mention of
Okay.
tailbiter.
so that's the bottom of where?
147.
147.
Okay. And Jeremiah commented on chrysophylax is Greek for gold guard. And divas, I can't quite make out the mark. over there.
DIVES.
There's a mark over the I, I can't quite make it out. But yeah, DIVES is Latin for rich. His source was TolkienGateway.net.
Nice.
I used to host the IRC there for years.
Yes, it was Greek Chrysostom, gold now.
Chrysophylax.
It's gold guarded. Nice little,
Thank you for that, Jeremiah.
yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up on time. Thank you, everybody who made it. This was a good showing. Not quite a record yet, but a record for here at the house.
Before we
Yes, Brian,
leave off
please.
the
Last
story-
minute comments and such.
Well, this last minute, so the Cotamortix is known colloquially as Tailbiter, but what sword in the Lord of the Rings was nicknamed
Oh, right.
Fighter.
Orc fighter, right.
Orc
right.
Orcus.
Orcus, right?
No,
It was Gandalf's sword, wasn't it?
Flamdring.
Landry, yeah.
because they nicknamed one, didn't the
Bow
orcs?
hammer and
Right, Fullhammer and Orc Cleaver. But
Cleaver,
in the orcs' nicknames for them, one was Biter and
Yeah,
one
Biter.
was
Beater.
Beater.
right,
Yes.
yeah, fighter and beater. That's right. Yeah.
And Stinger
Yes.
Stinger was named by Bilbo
Yes.
He made that up.
in the vernacular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the vulgar.
in the vulgar time.
Oh, and there, yep, Jeremiah just said Glamdring, Beater and Biter, Orcrist, Glamdring, I think, yeah, so
Yeah,
all
same,
along
around
nicely.
the same, yeah.
So again, we meet every second Saturday of the month generally. If there's a change, it's we announced on the website, tolkienscholars.org. The meeting notes from this meeting will be on the website sometime after the meetings. It varies because we all have lives, families, all of that. But tolkienscholars.org is the website. We're also on Facebook under Tolkien Scholars, Twitter under Tolkien Scholars, Google Plus under Tolkien Scholars. I think you're seeing the pattern here. Or you can search for Tolkien Moot, which is our annual convention, and then you'll see the links from there. So Saturdays, second Saturday of each month, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. We welcome all levels of interest in Tolkien, and I monitor a number of IRC chat rooms. I try to monitor the Facebook and Twitter and other pages, and then monitor comments on YouTube and Google Plus. I am reading. There is some way to enable the comments during the broadcast, but you have to go through this whole process now, and Google kind of hides the documentation. I'm reading people commenting on this particular problem. So hopefully next broadcast I'll have it enabled so you can comment during the YouTube stream. Otherwise, just go to the Tolkien Scholars website and I turn on anonymous comments for you to comment during the stream. And you'll be able to see this broadcast and all past broadcasts at the youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars YouTube channel.
And for those of you who joined us in the last hour, we've been reading from Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien.
And we're at about page 15?
33.
33.
Okay, well,
What?
the 15th page of that,
33.
is it 33? Okay.
Yes.
All right, it's my digital version.
Exactly, minus 2.
So we're almost halfway through the story, and we've had some nice interjections and such.
Very lighthearted.
Jeremiah says, I got your newsletter about a fortnight ago. I did reply to it, but got some sort of bounce back. Can't call the others. Didn't resend. Yeah, ever since I moved my mail server to some other software because it's supposed to be more up to date, so I moved from QMail and EasyMLM, which I was really happy with, but it hasn't been updated in years to fight spam. So I eventually had to break down and switch to Postfix and Mailman. And Postfix is fine, but Mailman has been a pain in the rear because it doesn't let you do virtual domains the way EasyMLM. EasyMLM is so much easier, so much better, but it doesn't play well with Postfix. Anyway, techie stuff. So I'm still trying to get all the lists working, and so I apologize for that. It is getting better, and I will so expect some more tests in the next couple of weeks to try to fix all the bugs with the email list. All of you have had the problem where when you've tried to reply, it's bounced. So right now it's only working as a one-way list, which is progress, sadly, but it's being difficult because I host so many websites and domains. It just doesn't handle all the different websites well. I host about 30 different community sites on my server. So anyway, apologies that it's been such a slow transition to the new everything, but the performance has been a lot better. So so Jeremiah, sorry about that. I'll see if we can get the next round of email lists working properly, and appreciate the feedback. You can always email TolkienScholars@gmail.com to contact me, and with any problems or questions or requests. And again, everybody's welcome. Thank you, Corey, for making it this. We really appreciate it. We will see you next month.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful. And I'm glad all of you. I mean, this is great to have this.
Yeah.
Everybody's still comfortable here. I mean, we did the coffee shop thing for years because the point was I wanted us to be visible to the local public, and that's how some people joined us. But we kept running into problems with the broadcast side of it anyway. The noise was always a problem because the cappuccino.
And sometimes the management.
And then we ran into a problem. For whatever reason, the management just decided they didn't want a regular gathering there anymore.
Interesting note.
Even though everybody else loved us there.
Interesting note. So the Rocket Bakery on the north
is
one
no longer there.
is
It's
now
something else now.
So now it's a Thomas Hammer.
Right.
They've actually removed the wall between that little room
Larger,
and made that larger by
but it's less private.
Yeah.
So it's really noisy. So noise was a real problem for getting everybody else involved. Is everybody still happy with this arrangement? But anyway, those of you watching, if you're in the Spokane area or passing through, you're welcome. You can RSVP through the Meetup group on meetup.com. You can look up Tolkien Society in Spokane, you'll find it. Or just contact me. All these different ways you can do so, and I'll give you my address to show up.
Assuming the email works.
Yeah. And if we end up getting larger, I have a hole downstairs that I can have 20, 30 people downstairs. Yes. I've got a green screen and lighting equipment and everything.
So you could move it to the dungeon.
Yes. But it's a daylight basement, so, you know.
Not a nasty dungeon.
Take care, Chris. So, thank you, everybody. Wherever you may be well. Namaste.
Namaste.
All right.